Why am I not sitting with Gord? Why do I have that behind me? We'll tell you in 10 seconds. This is Krown, Gridiron Nation on TSN. And welcome to the CTV Bureau in London, England. I'm Jim Mullen doing a college football show from London, England. Yes, that is a little odd. I'll tell you why. My other gig is President of Football Canada, and I was here for the IFAF, International American Football Congress. But enough about that. You want to see football highlights featuring our best Canadians in our 2-minute offense. Chuba Hubbard in Oklahoma State wrangling them TCU Horned Frogs in Stillwater. Chuba with a slow start in this one, held to only 31 yards on the ground in the first half, but in the second, the Chuba train pulled away from the station. A 92-yard TD run, followed up by one of the 62-yard variety. When he finished with 2:27 on the day, en route to a 7-point win over Texas Christian. Notre Dame hosting Virginia Tech. The Irish are not making it easy on themselves these days, are they? Notre Dame needed a late drive in this one to get the dub. Abbotsford, BC's Chase Claypool with 2 big catches on the final drive, which led to an Ian Book rushing TD. Claypool finishing with 8 receptions for 118. Notre Dame winning this one by a digit. The Illinois Illini are now winners of 3 straight, dismantling Rutgers by 28. London, Ontario, Sidney Brown active once again on defense for the Illini, finishing with 5 tackles. It was a family affair as his twin brother Chase got his first touches of the year, 3 of them for 18 yards. Virginia, North Carolina, the Cavs won by 7, but the big story here was Cavs wide receiver Terrell Jana with the biggest game of his career. The Burnaby native finished with 13 catches, the second most by any Cavalier in a single game, added 146 yards. More on Terrell Jana in just a little bit. The Oregon Ducks escaped South Central after taking down the USC Trojans. This one was not even close. The Ducks put up a 56-burger in their win. Vancouver-born Javon Holland finished with 6 tackles. Oregon now has won 8 in a row. Oregon is on a roll after that opening loss to Auburn. Is this one of the best wins of the season for the Oregon Ducks?
I would say that it's certainly one of the more impressive wins for the Oregon Ducks. They've gone into Seattle and beaten the University of Washington in Seattle, and now they've gone into LA and beaten an LA team in LA, and that's always a good season for them. And this team is being led on both sides of the ball. They're playing at a high level on both sides, and that secondary, Javon Holland, our Canadian guy, was actually somewhat quiet this week, but the rest of the secondary stepped up big time, forcing 4 turnovers by USC quarterback Keaton Slovis, including a pick 6. And then on the other side of the ball, they started out slow, but Justin Herbert, just as the naysayers were starting to creep in a little bit, Oregon's All-American quarterback Justin Herbert turned it on and really started picking apart the Trojans' defense. For the Ducks moving forward, they have 3 games left. They host Arizona after a bye week. They go into Tempe and play Arizona State, and then they host Oregon State in the game they call the Civil War in that state. Looks like it's a bit of a coast to the Pac-12 title game from here on out for the Ducks.
Well, it's time to see where all our Canadian guys rank, even if I'm sitting here in England in our stateside 5. In at number 5, senior D-end and Nova Scotian Isaac Berglund out of southeastern Louisiana. 6 tackles, 3 solos, 2 tackles for loss, and a sack and a half in a win over Stephen F. Austin. At number 4, Notre Dame's Chase Claypool with a great game. The Abbotsford native finished with 8 receptions and 118 in a 21-20 win over Virginia Tech. First time on the list for Mont Saint Hilaire native and Delaware State running back Thomas Bertrand Hudon. He finished with 20 carries, 121 yards, and 2 tutties. At number 2, Burnaby's Terrell Jana with a career game for the Virginia Cavaliers. 13 receptions for 146 versus UNC. And at number 1, no surprise here, the Chuba train keeps on a-rolling in Stillwater. The kid from Sherwood Park, Alberta, with another 200-plus rushing game. This one, 227 on 20 carries, found the end zone twice. Hubbard continues at the top of the table in a couple of categories. He is first in rushing TDs in the NCAA, but most importantly, He is first overall in the nation in rushing. So while we're sitting here in London, why don't we connect with somebody in New York to talk about a running back from Sherwood Park, Alberta, who's down in Oklahoma. It makes total sense, doesn't it? So it is time to call in Jesse Palmer, ABC ESPN football analyst. And Jesse, one simple question for you. What makes Chuba Hubbard so special?
You know, I think Chuba Hubbard's a complete running back. He's got a lot of skill sets. The first thing he has, I think, is vision. And at Oklahoma State, they love to run that zone play. And as a runner, you really have to be patient. You have to press the hole, and you have to let the creases sort of unfold in front of you. An offensive lineman, they're working off of double-team blocks. They're getting into the second level. And that hole could come to the front side of the play. It could come right in front of you, or it could come in a cutback form. And Chuba Hubbard really has the patience, and he has the vision to be able to dissect where those creases are. That's number one. Number two, he can make people miss. Chuba's a very strong runner at the line of scrimmage with his leg strength. He can run through arm tackles. He can push the pile. And then when he gets into the second level, he's got the wiggle to make linebackers and make safeties and DBs miss. And that's a big reason why this guy's a home run threat. When you get him in the second level, he can spring and break through a tackle and get off to the races. But that's really, to me, the third thing that's so special and unique about Chuba Hubbard. He's got home run speed. It's something running backs either have or they don't. When Chuba Hubbard gets into the second level, nobody is going to catch him. And you can't say that for a lot of running backs, especially at the college level. You turn on the TV, you see a lot of guys get walked every single weekend. Chuba Hubbard does not. I expect him at the combine to run a really good 40-yard dash time, and I think because of that, and when you put all of those three things together, his vision, his ability to make people miss, but the home run speed makes Chuba Hubbard a draft pick that's going to have a future playing on Sundays.
Our thanks to Jesse Palmer. Now it's time to go back to Toronto and Mike. And Terrell Jana had an outstanding game, practically a record-setting game for Virginia as a receiver. What can you say about his performance?
Oh boy, to do it in a big game against UNC as well. I mean, he tied his career high for catches with 9 in the first half. He had 5 catches for 44 yards on 1 drive in the first half. Ended up with 13 for 146 yards. He was just spectacular in the game. And it wasn't just catching the football. He recovered a fumble. He threw an absolutely fantastic block to get one of his other teammates into the end zone at one point. And for the last couple of years, they've had a post-game tradition where they break a rock. They get a sledgehammer in the locker room and they literally break a rock. And he was selected to do it as their player of the game. So a really memorable game for the junior receiver from Burnaby.
Coming up, it was the first full week of playoffs in U Sports. We'll tell you all about it.
In British Columbia's Similkameen Valley, our partner Sonny Dollywall and his family grow and pack some of the finest fruit you will ever taste. Thank you, Sonny, for making Krown produce fresh at its best.
Welcome back, everyone. It was time to win or go home in U Sports, and we'll tell you all about it in our 3-minute warning. Yates Cup semifinal number 1, Waterloo taking on the defending champs Western, and this one did not go as expected. The Mustangs won it, but not because of their offense. It was because of their defense. The Stangs D kept Trey Ford in check, forcing 3 turnovers, including a game-winning 65-yard interception return by Kojo Udum in the 4th quarter for the 5th time in a row. Western is moving on to the Yates Cup. Yates Cup semifinal number 2, and for the first time since 2014, the McMaster Marauders are heading to the Yates final after defeating Guelph by 10. Mac's defense came to play once again after allowing only 9 points in the win. Quarterback Andreas Duick led the way for the offense with a highlight 55-yard TD run. Let's head to Quebec, and no surprises here. Laval beat up on Concordia in one of the Dunsmore semifinal games by 32 points. Impressive performance from Laval's first-year pivot, Thomas Bolduc. He threw for 311 and 3 touchdowns. And of course, the Rouge et Or are moving on. For the first time in Bishop's history, they are heading to a Loney Bowl after defeating the Mount Allison Mounties for the AUS semifinal 28-18. Gators quarterback Charles Aubry had the game he needed, passing for 213 and throwing for 2 touchdown strikes. Bishops will face Acadia in the Loney Bowl. BW semifinals now. Saskatchewan hosting Alberta. Alberta took a 6-point lead into the half, but in the second, the only points the Golden Bears scored were on a conceded safety. The Dogs got their offensive act together. This Adam Mackert 7-yard TD run and 2 field goals from David Soley was all the Green Dogs would need to book their ticket to a second straight Hardy Cup berth. In the other Can West semi, Calgary hosting Manitoba. And let's pick this one up with just under 4 minutes to go, tied at 40s. Calgary with the ball. It is Heck Crichton winner Adam Sinagra calling his own number from 9 yards out for the TD to take the lead with only a minute left. The Bisons get the ball. They would drive to the Dinos 50. One last play. Des Cotillier heaves it up. It looks like this one will hit the turf, but it's deflected right into the midst of Tristan Dice. He gets in for the touchdown, capping off a 30-point fourth quarter for the Herd. Coach Doby elects to go for 2 and the win. Cotillier drops back. He's picked off. The Dinos win a game for the ages. Gord, it's been a very uneven season in the Canada West, but how good of a game was that coming out of Calgary?
Yeah, I mean, I said on the program last week that I felt like the Canada West games were going to be close games, which both of them were, but I said I wasn't sure whether they were going to be good games, and despite it being kind of a sloppy game still, boy was Calgary and Manitoba fun, led by a last-second Hail Mary, and then Brian Doby with the big Stones move to go for 2 for the win, goes right through the receiver's hands, but this was a fun one. Adam Sinagra looks like he's starting to get back on track as he threw for 4 touchdowns and rushed for another while only throwing the 1 interception. They'll be hosting Saskatchewan, the team that I felt is probably playing the best in the Canada West right now. They hold off Alberta at home to make that a really interesting Hardy Cup final this weekend.
Mike, Western and Waterloo is a game all 3 of us focused on last week. Now that you've seen the game, now that you've experienced that game, did Western win it or did Waterloo lose it?
That's a good question, a good way to put it, because, you know, if you look at Waterloo specifically defensively, I didn't recognize that team, especially in the first half where the defense played particularly well, yet at the same time, 2 or 3 dropped interceptions. There was a missed touchdown opportunity with a drop in the end zone, a wide field goal, and that was just in the first half. I thought Waterloo played its best defensive game by far of the season, holding Western to 3s instead of 7s, yet at the end of the game, Western put up 30 and still won the football game. So maybe Western didn't play its best game, and maybe that speaks about how good they can be, because they didn't look like Western and still came up with a win. Other side of the spectrum, as Jim Mullen would like to say, this was a good old-fashioned rock fight. This was kind of a Laval-Montreal type game, 7-5 at the half. There were injuries at a fairly regular pace at one point in this game. Big defensive play, which we'll talk about a little bit later on in the program on Weekend Warriors. But, you know, this was just a good old-fashioned, hard-nosed playoff defensive football game. And the biggest play, Andreas Dueck, not with his arm, but with a 55-yard run. So it was an interesting, intriguing game. They were both fun to watch simultaneously, but they were entertaining football games, even though they may have not been pristine.
Yeah, that's right. It'll be interesting to see if this game's just a blip for the Western juggernaut or if they actually are vulnerable as they may have looked this past weekend. You go out to Quebec, Laval, Montreal, the big 2, cruise through their games predictably so. It's almost as if a 2-6 team shouldn't be in the playoffs. And then Bishops hold serve at home, and all of a sudden the Bishops Gators, arguably the most moribund program in the entire country the last 2 or 3 seasons, are now in the Loney Bowl final as they travel into Wolfville to play the Acadia Axemen. They'll be big underdogs in that game, but it's a huge accomplishment that they've even got this far. And how about that if that national semifinal ends up being Quebec versus Quebec? I'm sure the Atlanteans would really be happy about that.
Coming up, we will look ahead to next week in college football on both sides of the border. Stick around.
From the Similkameen Valley in British Columbia to the Western Cape of South Africa, our global network of grower partners produce the finest fruits and vegetables for Canadians. Those partners make Krown produce fresh at its best.
As usual, at this time of the show, it's time to take a look ahead to the weekend in college football on both sides of the border in our game previews. Number 5, Penn State taking on number 13, Minnesota. Both of these teams have not lost a game this season. The winner of this one will be one step closer to making the college football playoffs. This should be a defensive battle with both teams in the top 20 in terms of yards allowed per game in the entire NCAA.
That's right. This game is pretty much the CanCon game of the season as Benjamin St. Just and the Minnesota Golden Gophers host the Penn State Nittany Lions and the Canadian trio of Sutherland, Joseph, and Lukita. And both teams undefeated going into this. It's probably just the game of the week in general, and it is a huge game for the resurgent Gophers under PJ Fleck. And Penn State, they've just been rolling all season long. Their roller coaster ride continues. Here's another tough test, which will be followed by an easier game, which is then followed by Ohio State. Realistically, they need to win this one to remain in the national playoff picture. We'll see if that one pans out for them, or if the Gophers can keep their undefeated run going and maybe put themselves into playoff contention.
There they are, your 4 conference finals. Let's face it, this is where the most competitive games are played all year. Everyone is well matched, and they are all rivalry games. So let's start off with the Yates Cup, Mike. It is MAC, it is Western. I wouldn't be painting purple on that plaque yet when it comes to the Yates Cup. Your thoughts on previewing that game?
Well, you know, we got the 2 best teams in terms of seeding, 1 versus 2, which is always nice. We've got 2 players who, at quarterback for the respective teams, played off the charts well this year. You know, Chris Merchant, we've talked about a lot. Andreas Dueck has certainly been a phenomenal quarterback this year and a big eye-opener. 2 really good offenses, 2 dominating defenses at time. Maybe the advantage here goes down to Mark Leggio, who has just been spectacular this year, and he's ready to kick in the CFL now.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if McMaster's offense can get it going through the air. Andreas Dueck has had to rely on his feet a little bit more in the last couple weeks, so that'll be an interesting thing to look for in this game. Out west, the Hardy Cup looks like it's shaping up to be a big O kind of day. Both of these offenses put up almost 500 yards of offense last week. Saskatchewan rolls into town. Mason Nyas played really well last week, and so did Adam Mackert. And this is a team that has been battle-tested with their deep run last year versus the Calgary Dinos, who a lot of their veteran guys have been battle-tested as well. These have clearly been, in my opinion, the best 2 teams in the Canada West this season. They are both fully deserving of being in this game. It's another 1-2 matchup, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how it plays out. But I would expect fireworks in this one.
Well, I hope the West doesn't get all the points, but they just may, because I don't think anybody expects a lot in terms of the Dunsmore Cup. If you like boxing history, just think back to Ali Fraser back in the day. They had 3 fights, and all of them were messy, dirty, highly entertaining. The 2 combatants didn't like one another. That's the Dunsmore Cup. Laval, since Balduc took over, they look like a little bit of a different team. He's got it going of late as he's developed. And he had a pretty good game last time out against Montreal. They just couldn't get the ball in the end zone. So, you know, the fact that the game is in Laval, if home field advantage is normally worth 3 to 5 points, it might be worth 10 points here, and that could be enough. Just the home field advantage, in my estimation, should put Laval over the top, and I think they're a heavy favorite to win the Vanier at this stage.
And from Quebec's main championship, we may be seeing Quebec's side piece championship in the Loney Bowl as Bishops goes into Wolfville to play the undefeated Acadia Axemen. Now, Acadia is going to be a favorite in this game as they try to defend Atlantic Pride from the invasion from the west. But Bishops has been playing really well. They finished strong at home in that Mount A game last week. And with Acadia being off, you wonder if there may be some rust setting in as they were cruising to the finale in the regular season as well. But Hunter Gennard has had a fantastic season with that offense, and it'll be interesting to see if Bishops can keep them limited and grind one out.
Coming up next, it's our Weekend Warriors. There it is, your Power 7 with a heavy emphasis on the teams from Central Canada. Laval in at 1, Western in at 2, McMaster right on their heels. Montreal's got a shot. It's anyone's guess between 5 and 6, though, with Calgary and the defending champion Saskatchewan rolling into McMahon. And we'll throw Waterloo in there because we'd love to see them get a second chance. Weekend Warriors to you, Gord.
My weekend warrior this past weekend actually lost his game, but he experienced all the most exhilarating highs and the most crushing lows that football can give you in the span of about 3 minutes, and that's Tristan Dice from the Manitoba Bisons. He caught a last-second Hail Mary for a 56-yard touchdown to put the Bisons within 1. The coach decides to go for 2. They dial up his number again, and the ball goes right through his hands, ending their season, and as a fifth-year guy, ending his career as well. for the worst luck after the best of luck and for persevering through all of it. Tristan Tice, you are my weekend warrior.
My weekend warrior this week goes to Nate Edwards with the McMaster Marauders, and in a game that was absolutely dominated by defense, he was spectacular, especially as the game progressed. He ended up with 9 tackles and had a sack and a tackle for a loss, and you know, he really made the defensive play of the game when it looked like Guelph was going to get back in the game. He made a fantastic tackle at the 3-yard line of Theo Landers when it looked like Guelph was going to make it a 1-score game. When they came up with the concept of the weekend warrior, we wanted to highlight some of the unsung guys. Nate Edwards, you get the nod from me this week.
My weekend warrior comes from the Laval Rouge Aor, and it is on the offensive side of the ball, which may have been a surprise if we jump back into the time machine. Their offense has sputtered all season long, but redemption comes in the form of a semifinal performance from Thomas Bolduc. Listen to these numbers: 17 of 25 for 313 yards and 3 touchdowns. Thomas Bolduc, you are my weekend warrior. Triple W2K to you in Toronto, Mike.
Well, let's start with the obvious one. Who's going to win this weekend in youth sports? I mean, we've got the final 4 conference games, and they're all intriguing storylines. You know, will Cinderella run continue for Bishops? You know, how many points are going to be scored in the Hardy? Can McMaster continue this Cinderella run on its own? And who's going to win the rock fight, as Mr. Mullen likes to refer to it? I think they're all rivalry games as well, which adds to the intrigue. So I just can't wait for Saturday to sit back and put the feet up and watch some really good youth sports football.
Gentlemen, what I want to know is just which Canadian content are we going to be able to see in the postseason down south? Notre Dame, Virginia, Oregon, Penn State, Minnesota, and both Oklahoma squads with Canadians on them are already in. Likely to get in because they're at 5-4 and have a couple easy games left are the Illinois Fighting Illini. Unlikely to get in at 4-5 with 2 difficult games left are the UCLA Bruins. But what's really interesting is the number of coin flip teams involving Canadians that are about 50-50 whether they'll get to the magic number of 6 wins or not. And that is Ohio, Buffalo, Fresno State, and Tennessee. They've all got legitimate chances, but they'll have to win some close games to make themselves bowl eligible. I'm interested in finding out who's going to get there and who isn't.
Next week, we will return to the chair in Vancouver at the Hubcast Studios, but from London. This is Jim Mullen saying, let's get out to the game.